It started on a quiet Tuesday morning, the kind where nothing ever happens, and you expect your day to go exactly as planned. I walked out of my house with my coffee still steaming, keys in hand, already late for work. That's when I saw it. A bright orange HOA enforcement SUV parked directly across my driveway, bumper to bumper, like it had been placed there on purpose. No note. No warning. Just a smug little HOA logo staring back at me like a challenge. At first, I assumed it was a mistake. Surely no one would be bold enough to block a homeowner's driveway on private property. So I waited. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. That's when she appeared, clipboard tucked under her arm, sunglasses on, walking like she owned the entire street. The HOA Karen. She glanced at me, looked at her watch, and without even stopping said, "You're in violation. Landscaping debris visible. I'll be just a moment." I told her calmly that she was blocking my driveway and I needed to leave. She didn't even look back. Instead, she waved her hand dismissively and said the words that changed everything: HOA business takes priority. Priority. Over my property. Over my time. Over basic common sense. That's when I realized, this wasn't an accident. This was a power move. I tried reasoning with her. I explained that I pay my dues, that my driveway is clearly marked, and that blocking it was illegal. She finally turned around, smirked, and said, "You should have read the bylaws." Then she added a citation to my door for improper yard waste placement, a single leaf near my fence. 1 leaf. And then, slowly, deliberately, she continued her inspection, while my car sat trapped. By the time she moved her SUV, I was nearly an hour late. But what really stuck with me wasn't the delay, it was the arrogance. The absolute confidence that nothing would happen to her. That the HOA was untouchable. And for the first time since moving into that neighborhood, I decided I was done being polite. That night, I pulled out the HOA bylaws. Every page. Every footnote. And buried deep in the rules, I found something interesting. The HOA had zero authority over driveway access on individually deeded properties. Blocking it wasn't just rude. It was a violation. But instead of filing a complaint and waiting months for nothing to happen, I decided to do something far more satisfying. I started planning. Over the next 2 weeks, I submitted perfectly compliant improvement requests, ones the HOA couldn't legally deny. First, a decorative retaining wall near the driveway. Approved. Then, reinforced concrete edging for erosion control. Approved again. What they didn't realize was that each approval was another brick in the trap they were walking into. Construction day came, and the neighborhood was buzzing. Workers installed heavy steel planters, anchored deep into the ground, lining both sides of my driveway entrance. They were beautiful, elegant, fully HOA approved. And most importantly, they made it physically impossible for any vehicle to block my driveway without parking illegally in the street. When the HOA Karen showed up a week later and realized what I'd done, her face dropped. She stepped out of her SUV, looked at the planters, then at me, and said, "You can't do this." I smiled and handed her copies of the approval forms, with her own signature highlighted. She didn't say another word. But the story doesn't end there. A month later, the HOA tried to fine me for obstructing access. That's when my lawyer sent them a letter citing state property law, driveway access protections, and photographic evidence of her blocking my driveway on multiple occasions. Included was a polite notice informing them that any further harassment would result in legal action against the HOA and the individual officer personally. 2 weeks later, the fines disappeared from my account. 3 weeks later, that HOA Karen was reassigned. And 6 months later, the HOA quietly updated its rules, explicitly banning enforcement vehicles from blocking private driveways. My driveway became the example they never wanted to talk about. Now, every time I pull into my driveway, I pass those steel planters. They're not just decoration. They're a reminder. A reminder that bullies rely on people staying silent. That power only works if you let it. And that sometimes, the best revenge isn't loud or angry. It's calm, calculated, and completely within the rules. So if you're dealing with an HOA that thinks it owns you, remember this. Read the bylaws, document everything, and never underestimate the power of doing things the right way. Because when you outplay them using their own system, There's nothing more satisfying.